Welcome to the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. And this is going to be a really great conversation. It's one that I don't usually have on the Awaken Heart podcast, but everything that we talk about, what's going on in the world stage, is all part of having an awakened heart and really opening up and listening to all sides and all perspectives. Well, we've seen a lot that's going on in the world lately that might sound like upside down world to a lot of people. And it's become so contentious to even talk about a lot of these things. Like we're seeing men and women's sports. We are seeing kids identifying as furries and litter boxes being put in kids' bathrooms, as well as tampons in boys' bathrooms. And along with a lot of other things, there's a lot of wokeism and there's a lot of DEI. People are getting hired strictly on their skin color, which we are here in the United States. And we have so many opportunities despite what has happened in the past. We learn from our past and we move forward. And there seems to be a lot of victim mentality out there, and people are being rewarded just because of somebody's skin color or how they identify. Now, on the Awakened Heart, from our perspective, everybody is one, and everybody is equally loved for who they are as human beings, despite the color of their skin or however they identify sexually or as far as whatever religion that they follow. That's what the beauty of being here in the United States is. We have the freedom to choose, and we want to keep that freedom to choose, and we want to live in harmony together. It's happening all over the world as well. We're seeing a lot of this wokeism happening, and we're seeing so many things that we didn't think we would see. Over the last couple of years, it's really intensified a lot. So it's not just the United States. We're seeing it in other countries as well, like England. We're seeing it in Ireland. We're seeing mass censorship happening, illegal immigration. In our country alone, the United States, it's projected that there's at least 21 million that have come over in the last 3.5 years. And that includes the gotaways, because we have the documented ones or the ones that came through and released right into our country. And they're getting all these benefits that American citizens aren't even getting. There's tons of fentanyl coming over the southern border. The cartels are making a ton of money. There's human trafficking. There's mass rapes happening. There's rapists that have been left into the country. There's murderers that have left into the country. And there's a few that are seeking a better life, but literally they're breaking asylum laws like right away when they, if they cross through Mexico and still come through our southern border. That's breaking asylum laws. These kids that are missing, they're delivered right into their abusers' hands. They're sex trafficked, they're human slavery, there's organ harvesting. It's really disturbing. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. And then the whole trans movement, wokeism, DEI, yada, yada, yada. So today's conversation, we're diving into that. A lot of people are afraid to touch on the subject. I'm trying to come at it with an awakened heart, because part of it is not ignoring what's going on. I'm a huge advocate for women and women's rights, and children need to be protected, and I love our country. And I know today's guest, he's from England, and he sees it happening there as well. Today, I'm joined by Sean Parker, a multi-talented writer, artist, and musician from the UK with a truly unique background. With over 8 books, 6 albums, and a TEDx talk to his name, Sean's work spans cultural theory, art media critique, and justice reform. For 10 years, he lived in Istanbul, immersing himself in the music and culture scene, where he wrote for Time Out Istanbul and Louder Than War and taught English and cultural studies. Sean brings a centrist libertarian perspective, often tackling controversial topics like cancel culture, media, justice reform, and the nuances within progressive ideologies. His latest book, A Delicate Balance of Reason, Adventures in the Culture Wars, explores these issues in depth and was released this May, with an Audible version coming soon. Sean's thoughtful approach and diverse experience makes him the perfect guest for an eye-opening discussion today. So get ready as we dive in and have your heart and your mind opened. Hey, Sean, welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast.
Delighted to be here, Nancy. Thank you very much.
I'm delighted you're here too, all the way from England. I'm really excited about this conversation. And where did my little screenshot go? Hold on one second. Oh, here we go. So I'm really excited about this conversation because it's not one that I've really had on any of my other episodes. And this is, I've done several of them. So I'm really excited about this conversation because there's so much happening in the world today that we're seeing, not just in where you live in England and where I live in the United States. We're seeing things happen kind of on a global scale. And you have such a really great background as you studied fine arts and you're a writer, artist, musician. You just have a new book that came out, The Adventures in Culture, correct? Was that it? Wasn't that what you said it was? Adventures in Culture, Delicate Balance of Reason.
Adventures in the Culture Wars.
Okay, Delicate Balance of Reason, Adventures in the Culture Wars. And that just recently came out.
Yes, true. About a month ago.
Oh, okay, it came out a month ago.
But I've just released the audio book, so that's the new thing.
Okay, the audiobook. And where is that available?
On Audible.
Audible.
Go to Google and search it on there.
Got it. So for my audience that don't really, I gave a little bit in our intro, but that they don't really know who you are. Can you tell us about your early life in Exeter and what led you to pursue a master's in fine art?
Sure. I was born in 1975 in Exeter in Devon, which is a lovely little university town in the southwest of England. My dad was a drama lecturer at Exeter University, and my mum was a speech therapist there too. So then they split up in the 80s, as 80s couples did. And then going into time, I grew up in South Wales, where our dad took us. And then eventually in 1997, I went back to university as a mature student at the age of 22 after my dad died, and just decided, what do I want to do now? What's my real thing? And it turned out to be fine arts because of the broad-basedness of it. I like broad-based things, and ended up staying at art school for 6 years and doing a master's in the end, specializing in cultural theory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what led to the book that you're writing now. And I know you've had so the education for creative arts, it really shaped your career as a writer, artist, and musician. And then it led to your dissertation, which was in cultural theory, right?
Yeah,
cultural
that's
theory,
right. Yeah.
Is that what you call it?
Cultural theory.
Okay.
It's all right. It was called Perspectives of Intimacy in Cultural Theory, my master's degree, but it's 20 years ago now, so it's all a bit, lost in my mum's attic.
What is cultural theory? How is it described?
Almost all of the essays that we see on online, which are think pieces, if a thing is talking about the Me Too movement and you go in there and it's not about a specific story, but it's about the entire thing, then that's cultural theory, because it's analyzing what happened and why and who was affected and what's underneath it, as opposed to what the actual stories are. It's the theory is the whole thing around all the stories. Yeah, it's like being a journalist, but being between a journalist and a writer,
Okay. So is that what we're seeing a lot now? When we see a newscaster, it's like, because I see a lot, is it cultural theory? Is that what we're seeing out there as far as how people are reporting the news and stuff? Or what?
Yeah, exactly. There's far too much of it, actually. We're swamped by it, because you've got all these kind of humanities students who aren't able to be employed in anything else, coming out of their university to be journalists. becoming citizen journalists or whatever else, and just they start to type loads and loads of things, from conspiracy theories to cultural theory to proper academic documents, and everything gets mixed up. And before you know it, there's a million different articles everywhere. They can call it cultural theory. At the time when I was doing it is a bit more specialized. I don't make any claims to what I do. It is what it is, as they say, but there's far too much of it, and it's in the whole industry now. Clickbait.
What do you think about a lot of these universities now that the kids are coming out indoctrinated? And I mean, we're seeing it a lot here where they're literally hating our country. I love where I live, but I mean, we see people walking around with communism flags and they're free Palestine when we've got our problems at our own southern border, and they went to our capital and destroyed like the Liberty Bell and tearing down flags and burning them, and nothing happens to them. But it seems like a lot of these kids nowadays are taught to really not like their culture or hate things. There things that are coming out, and everything. Everyone is so sensitive now. They seem so sensitive, and it seems like we've come upon a huge victim mentality with a lot of these people, and blaming other people for their suffering, or you called me this, or you need to, call me by these pronouns, and I'm like upset about it seems topsy-turvy. What do you see as far as what's happening at these universities nowadays?
Yeah, well, here in England, if America sneezes, we catch a cold, and we get everything that you guys do. So, and then by the prism of cultural theory, I'm able to analyze it. And the fact is, as Steven Pinker points out, one of your best, is that 95% of academic staff and lecturers are left-leaning, and which means that they're a Democrat at the softest of that, and they're a communist at the hardest of it. And it's the same in our country. You're a Labour supporter at the softest and a communist at the hardest. And all things on the left are associated with grievance. It's a reaction against what they see as unfairness in the world. So when everything's a reaction against unfairness, everything becomes their fault rather than your own experience in life to do something with. So when you're able, 95%, to go, it's their fault, and you add critical race theory into that, which is specifically the black experience, of course, which has its own problems. Lots of black people, we all have black friends, right? And lots of friends from all over the world. And almost all of my black friends say, this is incredibly patronizing. We don't want this.
Exactly.
Creates racism. So you add that to the leftism and you get this groupthink. And it's very hard to get out of groupthink, even if in that 95%, there'll be plenty of the students going, I want to be myself and I want to be an individualist and a libertarian and things, but they're not allowed. And when you're not allowed, it's very hard to break out until they're really ready and they go and do something else.
And the groupthink, we saw a lot of that happen over the pandemic, where everyone did the narrative with that. Everyone did lockstep in line with this experimental injection that a lot of people listened to the propaganda and stepped in line and took it. So it was the whole group thing. And then, war on the people that didn't do the pokey jabby jab, that we were the unclean ones and that we were a menace to society. And really, I could see how what happened in Germany way back when, how they were turned against those people because literally being brainwashed and hypnotized that we're responsible for your problems. And that's what you're talking about as far as the cancel culture. And then it goes into the leftism and communism. It's your fault and you're to blame. And so the whole group think, and that's why it's important for other people to speak out, because that's what stops it from going to an atrocity, is when everyone gets into that group think against another party. Like, that's when really horrible things happen. So we're seeing a lot of this cancel culture. I mean, freaking Mr. Potato Head got canceled. Like, come on. And it's like the racist thing, like some of the stuff that comes out of their mouth. Oh, you need a voting ID is racist. You need an ID for everything in life. And they're saying it's racist. I mean, how racist is that? Like, they're not capable of getting an ID. Like, I'd be really upset. I mean, I'm of mixed race. And I've been told, like, oh, go back to England and I'm white supremacist. I'm like, you don't even know my heritage. So shut up.
Nope.
And then also our mayor of New York had said, oh, there's some black kids in the Bronx right now that don't know what a computer is. Come on now. Everyone knows what a computer is from 6 months on. So it's that kind of thing. It's like you're minimizing those in critical race theory, and they're teaching it in these schools now, and children don't need to be learning this thing. No, a lot of kids, they don't see color. And then like the poor white kids are being taught, oh, we're born white supremacists because I've got this melanin in my skin. I think it's just crazy. And so a lot of that is happening. And
Well,
it's progressivism.
And it completely goes against Martin Luther King's judge them by the content of the character, not the skin. And when academics have raised that, black academics have raised it, they've been kicked out of their academic faculties for not towing the party line. And that's where the cancel culture is here. Mr. Sean Corby is a jazz sort of trumpeter. He's an Irish jazz trumpeter in Britain. We've just done a publication for him on empowering the innocent, who I work with. And he's got a black wife. And he said in academic meetings, he said, I don't agree with critical race theory because of the things that I just said, because, it's not about being able to do something. It's about always trying to blame sort of someone else, and they design it that you can't escape from it. And that's the worst thing. And he was found to be correct by an adjudication panel. So he was able to keep his job, and I think he got some damages and things. And it's like, right, wow, you've actually got one over on them. And there's a suspicion behind all of the racist stuff and the sexist stuff and the trans stuff, almost all of the isms, let's face it, is that they don't know how far they can push stuff. And we've discovered over the last sort of 10 years, or especially 4 since COVID, that you can push it a long way. And they're surprised how far they can push it, And they're like, wow, okay, let's keep going. I sometimes don't think they've got an end goal. They're just pushing to see how far it goes. And eventually people sort of go, whoa, this is absolutely ridiculous. Don't cancel Mr. Potato Head. I don't know what you're talking about, of course, but I get the general idea.
Oh, you don't know Mr. Potato Head? It's like a potato, and you put eyes and a mustache on it. And it's a potato with feet and hands. Yeah, they canceled him. I don't know why.
They're terrible. Everyone's cancelled now. Why did they cancel him? Is it because he looks black or something? Is it that?
No, he got canceled. They pulled him. I don't know. Just like Aunt Jemima. I love my Aunt Jemima on my syrup. Uncle Ben. I love Uncle Ben. Come on. Land O'Lakes. Like, you can't say Indian. You can't dress up as Indian anymore. I dressed up as an Indian and cowboys. It's just insane. And it feels like it's intensifying. Like, I spent many years not paying attention to worldly things. I'd hear about it, but I didn't need to delve on it. I was about collective consciousness and all that stuff. Has it always been this nutty? Every time I tune in, I'm like, this is upside down world. You can't say woman? Now I just saw something in going to the Supreme Court in Massachusetts, where on the birth certificates, they don't put the word father, and the mother is going to be the person who gave birth or something like that. I mean, how insulting is that? We are mothers and we are fathers. So yeah, it's crazy stuff like
it is. It certainly hasn't always been like this, and it ramped up about 10 years ago, 2013, 14, coincidentally after the second Obama win, which, and often in any prime minister's second term, I say prime minister for us, they get confidence, which they didn't have on the first term, where they do all the mad shit that they were going to do early on, excuse my French, early on, and then they bring it all out when they got the confidence to do so. And it's a good chance that the suspicion that the WEF globalists thing, who the Democrats are alleged to be very much in bed with, the Labour Party, right? So if we're on that line, if we'll talk about that, then it's just about breaking down all the barriers between people. That's the positive spin. So everybody's the same. And the negative spin on that is that what that means is that it's communism, if you want everybody to be the same. And the libertarian individualist, which I've come to realize over the last 5 years that I am, just because of all this rubbish, says that no, the differences are important, celebrate them, enjoy them. And there's absolutely no hate in that. But the way they counter that is by calling everything hate. So this little podcast is completely reasonable, the rest of it. If they want to clip it, I'm sure they won't, but they would just sort of say, oh, look, a bunch of hate speech they're talking about because they're two white people. Well, we just discovered that you're not entirely white, and I've got a bunch of Irish. So it's like, deal with that.
What is white anymore? Melanin.
It wouldn't even matter anyway. The hate doesn't matter. All these things don't matter. But the problem is, Nancy, is that the big enemy is white heteronormativity. And anything in front of that, between progress and that, that is the thing to be got rid of. And if Islam, which is the most patriarchal thing, can be used, then they'll use it. And you'll get this whole anti-Israel, pro-Palestine thing on the way. And they're like, man, if you go out to Palestine as a gay person, you'd be chucked off a building. Well, for now, it doesn't matter. Well, they're fighting the white heteronormativity bit. And so they're trying to undermine all that through the universities and into the institutions.
Yeah, and they're paid instigators. They're getting paid. I mean, I just saw a video of 2 large tour buses letting them all off. I think this was in Washington. This just happened last week or the week before. I'm letting them all off to wreak havoc on the cities. It's same as BLM. Now it's the pro-Palestine thing. It's what BLM was before. So I just don't know what to do anymore. I mean, I try to detach myself. I get pulled away from everything that's happening in the world because it just doesn't make sense to my brain. Like what's happening is being shoved down our throats. If we don't agree with them, locked up in line, we're racist, misogynist, we're MAGA extremists, we're everything that the media is so biased. We know that they're tied, they're propaganda for the government. And I mean, your prime minister, the guy with the sandy hair, who was the guy that just left? What was his name again? The one that was during the pandemic was horrible.
It's the Boris Johnson, right?
Yes.
He hasn't been prime minister for 3 years. I hear you.
Right. No, I said before. I know that he was asked to, he got stepped down. It's the same, like the mouth, BBC can be like a mouthpiece of like, it's the same propaganda. It's the same thing. And it's so biased. It's like, can we just report the news? Because they're so against, it's just one thing for one side. And then it's all these talking heads. Just report the news. I don't care about your commentary or what you're thinking about it. Because it's brainwashing the masses that don't know better to do their own research, look at full clips, read studies, do everything on your own instead of like, I mean, my dad had MSNBC on, like pumped ad nauseum. I mean, he was a professor. Yeah, and I can see how he was a liberal arts, but he was a Democrat before, but it's not the same Democratic Party. I don't know. It's just, I'm seeing it happening in our country a lot, and I know it's just not in our country. It's everywhere. So cancel culture. Come after someone hard.
Yeah, we're absolutely experiencing a new... Sorry, you can't see very well. Anyway, we're absolutely experiencing a new sort of paradigm now, where like your dad's version of the Democratic Party was my dad's version of the Labour Party. Those things are in sort of tandem. And the fact, what's really interesting is that, as you're saying, you sort of message on a spiritual level. Usually, there's you have a post-democratic, post-capitalist view of things, of going, well, we don't need to worry about politics anymore because things are okay, and let's do higher level things. I love that. That's why I'm an artist, and that's my happiest. I'm doing art, not writing about all this stuff. But but it's okay because they're asking questions about freedom, and we have an expectation that the freedom's been established, right? Your country and mine. And now they're saying, no, actually, we might want something rather more like China for you, Sean and Nancy. Well, really? We weren't aware of that. So you suddenly have to wrench yourself out of your spiritual realm or your artistic realm and go, we're going to deal with this now without being asked, without the politeness, and we're very normal, pleasant people. I'm not a polemicist. I don't enjoy polemicism. I don't enjoy conflict very much. But when people are pushed with freedom, you're going to fight back, basically, aren't you? Yeah, and that's a really interesting part of what you say, because I know you wouldn't usually do this kind of thing, and me neither. So
no, yeah, it comes down to freedom. And my whole thing, I always look at like, how am I getting so triggered by all this? It's because I see the lies and lies and lies and lies, and I always wanted truth. And whatever it is, I want the truth. And in politics, I mean, I've always known it, and that's why I never paid attention to it before, because I felt politicians were all liars anyway, and they do in some regard. But then 2020 was the first election that I actually voted, and just seeing how everyone was against the person that I'm actually supporting, and I still support him, very vocal about it, because it's about, with our country, it's about patriotism, loving our country, and wanting our freedom. Like, stop having government imposing on everything I do. Everything's gotten more expensive. I see how they're trying to divide everybody, to conquer everybody. It's a global, takeover, and it's just, there's much more than these little things that we're doing. And like, oh, I'm so sensitive because you called me by she. Oh, we shouldn't have woman. What is a woman? And now we've got a vice president that's been installed as the presidential nominee, and she couldn't even define what a woman was before, and she's not even Black, and she's using that to run on. It's just like, I just want to return back to, I don't know if we'll ever return to our normal work, but just stay out of my space. Let me live my life. You do your art. I'll do my traveling, my talking about things, talking about alternative ways to heal without being censored, which I've been censored a bunch of times on YouTube for talking about homeopathy and not even towing the line of the mighty vaccine, or somebody that son became autistic after having an injection. I've just recently had something taken down because of talking about some scalar energy, harnessing the energy from the moon and the stars, which is free energy. Censoring on that. Can't people make up their own minds on stuff? It's it's become crazy. We're getting censored. Of course, I saw this during the last election cycle too. Things censored online, during the COVID thing. Just censoring. People cannot. I don't understand how I know the underlying reason. Most people don't see the underlying reason. I know why this is happening. I know what the plan is. I know about the psychopaths in Davos, Switzerland. I know that's where the control is. I know what they're doing. But it still hurts my flesh because it's upside down world and seeing how people
Well,
just get into it.
I mean, completely agree with everything you just said, by the way. But with the guys in sort of Davos, I'm not entirely convinced that they're psychopaths. I think that they think that they're right. They're old hippies, and they're trying to. They think they're doing the right thing, and they. But everyone goes good and evil. I don't go down those lines. I'm a bit more nuanced than good and evil, and I think they genuinely think they're doing like Tony Blair talking to Macron and to Bill Gates and what's his name, Soros's, all that stuff. Whatever. We're never going to be able to. Well, not right now. Hold them to account. But they think they're doing the right thing. They think if everybody just gets along,
Really, I never thought about it. I thought they were just
sort of thing, it'll all be fine.
Depopulation, okay, well, but I like that perspective. But I do like that perspective because
I think that they're prepared for all this pushback. Yeah,
they're prepared for all this pushback. I'm sorry if I'm freezing. Just know that when it comes together, it'll be like.
Okay. So I think that they're prepared for all this pushback, and that they've got ready. They realize that the individuals, and we're thinking long term, and their long term is for all those things to be gone. They think they're going to take down Islam and China, and I've got news for them. It's because I think that's what's going to happen after they've done with white heteronormativity. They're going to go against it, and whatever anyone wants to say about Jewishness, I don't even bother going there. We've got a very good relationship with Jewish people in Britain. It's very the anti-Semitism thing is a massive deal, very much between Islam and Jews, and I think they've done a great job with Hollywood, for example. Anyway, I don't need to go and talk about the Jewish question with all this. Everyone says they're in charge of it all. Well, Prince Charles could be in charge of it. It's not about who's in charge. It's about King Charles, rather. It's about what the game is and how they're making it happen. And they've managed to engage our indifference and to make and to use the podcast revolution, which is an incredibly positive thing that we're using right now, to get your audience to think about things that they shouldn't have to think about. It's quite an achievement to get everyone to think politically like that. We don't want to think politically. They're just making us do it. And it almost feels abuse because they're against truth, as you've just mentioned. You talk about the truth that you've just been talking about. You're not allowed to. And if you want to talk about the difference between a man and a woman, and to see 3 male winners on a podium in swimming or the boxing, to go, can you see how mental this is? And that's just the trans sort of story. And the good thing about Britain is that we've pushed back against the puberty blockers story.
Yes, I just saw that.
I'm very much behind. We should not be transing kids. I don't know about your audience.
Of course not. No.
Right. So it's like, it's massive industry in America. We're pushing back on that, and I'm hoping that America does help with that.
There are some states that are passing that. I mean, it's just kids that don't really know who they are. They're always changing. They have a lot of insecurities in school and trying to fit in. And now, you might need to transition. Be a tomboy for a while. It's not a big deal. A lot of people are tomboys and then they grow out of it. Doesn't mean that you're born in the wrong body. And it's a huge moneymaker. And just seeing how many of them have popped up all over the country and how much money they make, it's just really deplorable. But I am seeing a lot of states that are starting to pass stuff like no puberty blockers. for kids. And I'm really hoping that we have a change in leadership coming up because a lot more of that will be implemented as well. But luckily, we have power to a lot of the states still. And a lot of states are, removing that. But it's just, we've got kids that think they're furries in school and they're putting litter box. They're enabling these kids. You're enabling these kids. How is that very good for them? You're teaching to live in their fantasy world. It's a fantasy world. You do what you want to. Leave the kids out of it. If you choose to do this for your own self, okay, that's on you. But don't ask me to live in your fantasy world. I'm not going to call you Sheila when you're actually Brian, or I'm not going to call you a her or him. Maybe I'll call you by, I don't know. I'm not going to buy into it. And then I hate speech. Like, I think there's even thought police out there right now. I think Ireland was one of the most, they were passing things right now where they think you might be considering of saying something that's hateful, you can get arrested.
Fascinating in Ireland at the moment where, like, as you say, at home, it started in Scotland, they couldn't pass it, and they got rid of the First Minister. So they're sort of going, now, that was a great move. And now Ireland, they've also got rid of their Taoiseach, Prime Minister, who was trying to police people in their own homes. And the problem with the pronoun debate is if we're down the cafe talking in a group with a trans person, I'm sure both you and I would entertain whatever that adult needs to feel comfortable, would be polite, fine, he, she, whatever you want to do. But in their absence, they then want you to refer to them as their identity. Well, no, that's where it changes. There's politeness, and then there's biological reality. And in your absence, I'm going to tell the other person that, well, I don't know what's happened to Nancy, but apparently he thinks he's a woman now. Whichever direction it all goes in. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, they can't be policing things in your absence. It's not a way to do the pronoun debate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were taking kids. Where is it? In Canada? Where they took a child away from them because they wouldn't affirm them. And now there's been California Newsom, gruesome, passed where you could have two sets of records. So you could, you wouldn't report to the parents if they were, had counseling or used pronouns or needed a certain medicine. And they're like, yes, we have a right to raise your children. Like, no, you don't. No. To the parents. So
exactly. It seems to be another iteration of the attempt to get rid of any firm lines between. But I'm a person that likes to live in nuance. I don't like hard lines all over the place. So there's lots of grey areas in life to play with and have fun with creatively and all the rest of it. But when it comes to not with biology, you can do that with art and with spirituality, mentality, and all kinds of things, but not with what we've been given by nature. God, if you wish, or definitely nature. We've been given this, and I can feel like whatever I want to do, but I can't actually change all 3 trillion cells and then tell other people they must see that, because you're asking other people to believe in a delusion, which is a very, very wrong thing to do. It's a morally wrong thing to do. But because all of the rights and the wrongs are upturned now, no one knows what that means.
Yeah, it's the thought police. I'm very proud to be a woman. We've made a lot of strides to be a woman. There's a lot of things that go into being a woman, and I don't see any of the feminists. I don't like feminism. I like femininity. Feminism did a lot of great things, but it also hurt a lot of things. And I don't see anyone standing up for these women. I mean, I just saw there's 2 men going to be in the Olympic boxing for women. Like, there's physical, biological differences to them. And there were 30-year-old men swimming with, how were they, 8-year-old girls? It's like there was a 30-year-old man that was swimming with young girls and changing their lockers. And people are getting, I know that Riley Gaines was told with Aaliyah Thomas, he has a fixation, autoerotic fixation of dressing in women's clothes and all that. But when they told him they weren't comfortable with, all of a sudden there's a man with an intact penis behind them, they were told that they need counseling and they need to learn to live with it. No one is sticking up for these women. They're going into prisons. A lot of them are sexual offenders. Like, you can't take a men's prison. You're going to women's prison. They're going to start going to women's shelters. Where is our safety? but then we're told we're racist or we're prejudiced or all this stuff. Nobody's protecting us. I don't see any of these feminist women standing up for these women at all. They're silent.
Yeah. There's quite a good pushback in the UK on that as well. I don't know where they are in America. We've got Kathleen Stock and some other academics like this have been cancelled for the last 5 years. But their argument is winning the rationality argument, and people are starting to agree with the points behind everything that you just said. I think in America they've probably been crowded out by the market, but hopefully the states will go after their argument. The problem with feminism in this area is that it's split on it. There's a bunch of the feminists who are progressive, inverted commas, who are up for anyone defining as they wish, and then and thinking that it's a liberal way forward. They're with the globalists, and then there's the hardcore old lesbians, feminists who might happen to be lesbian, often are, who are absolutely saying this is crazy, and this is men dressing up as women in order to, and they're both right. And the problem with feminism is that it's already dividing people in a problematic way, because men are not, according to many people and according to the justice reform work I do, men are also done down in many fields, particularly the family courts, divorce laws and stuff like that. So all of these identity nightmares are all churning up at the same time as the internet going crazy with communication. And that's why we're all going crazy right now. And we're having some awful issues right here in Britain with Islamism right now, with lots of stabbings. And it's doing everybody's head in, But watching the Olympics at the same time with men televised beating up women, yes, in a boxing ring. And I guess women are consenting to this, but it's like, well, if you don't consent, it means you're not going to win your medal. What kind of a choice is that?
Right, you're not going to win it anyway against a man. And the thing is, like, there's, people in high school, they're taking their medals away and they train their whole life for it. But then there's also school sports where you're still going to compete when there's men. I know there was some girls that just literally walked off the field, which was wonderful. As a parent, I don't have kids myself, so but I can imagine if I wouldn't want my daughter to be playing in a men's sports. They need to just walk off, and then it's in the end of game. If you do refuse to compete against these men, it's game over. They can't keep, why don't they create their own sport? There's biological, physical differences, and I'm a proponent to support women. I've done dance classes before where you're supposed to move in really sensual ways, and there was a man in my space. And I didn't feel very comfortable because we talk about like the heritage of women and, our ancestor women. He's acting like he knows what he's talking about. You don't bleed, you can't give birth, and they're literally taking these babies and breastfeeding them with some chemical into a baby's mouth. Like, that's abuse. That's poison, but then it's accepted and it's okay. And the thing is all this media is going along with it. What do you see? Do you see anything changing? I know there's a lot of movements coming along where people are done with it. I know people have talked in their dollars when, like, Target, Budweiser, there's been something with John Deere as well, where, like, literally their stocks are plummeting. Disney stock plummeted. That's showing how most people, even though it's being touted over the media left and right that this is like okay and this is accepted, people, it doesn't seem for the most part are down with it at all. And they're talking as far as their wallets.
There's a huge cultural war going on, and the business war that you mentioned, the go woke, go broke, is easy to win because it's all about the greenbacks, isn't it? As you would say. So it's like that is almost a done deal. That Disney they've all realized that people don't want to be preached to, and they don't want every single advert to be trying to sell them some kind of egalitarian message, which isn't actually egalitarian at all. It's about equity of outcome. And equity of outcome actually means communism. I don't want to use that word too lightly, because the communism we might have in our minds is a very 1980s sort of Russian thing, where it's all, it's a very historical thing. But we've got a new socialism coming in, or they're trying to impose it, and they're not even going to give it that term. They're probably not going to give it any term. They'll probably call it democracy, but it's all about equality of outcome. So however good you are at something doesn't matter anymore. You are going to get exactly on a points basis what they get. Now, that might not be an entirely terrible thing in terms of being born into it, because that will be your expectation. But for us who are used to merit,
Freedom.
beauty, differences, we'll be sort of watching all that go and say, what's happened to the joy of bizarre art and bizarre thoughts being talked about, and the edges between people, and watching a violent film, being able to watch a violent film rather than your version of why someone shouldn't do violence as a film. There's a big difference between those two things: representation of things, which is art, and the messaging of it, which is all about you should. And I think everyone's having had enough of that, and we're aware the opposition to the globalists is the nationalists, for want of a better term, or the populists, which is it's not a negative word as far as I'm concerned, but it's what people say. Populism is like the big enemy. Well, it's individualism, isn't it? In your country, Mr. Trump, and in ours, Mr. Farage, and in to Russia, we got Putin, who's been doing that for 20 years with an iron rod, and all of the countries have their own version of this. Javier Milei in Argentina, there is standing up to it all over the place, and of course, those people are demonized by our the mainstream, which is absolutely dominated by political feminism and by the woke progressive agenda. So it does take, but thank goodness we got the podcast revolution where we can get both sides of it, and things like we're doing right now. For now.
Yes.
Sorry to be so negative. I didn't mean to be. I'm not.
No, don't be negative. It's something that needs to be talked about, because it's like you said, it's like, I think that's one of my triggers as well, as the freedom. I want freedom. Leave me alone. Let me live my beautiful life. And I think about, before I realized all this was happening, I mean, the pandemic was the big wake up call for me. Just how I never thought like something like this could happen in our country. Now I can see absolutely how it's happening, and I'm seeing it happening. And it's just so scary for me to see what they're marching in. I mean, Kamala just recently even said something about the socialized, everybody being inequality and equity and all that. And people are being hired off of freaking, like, I mean, you see it in Hollywood now, like 18-something, 16-something England, and there's like a black queen and there's a Asian, like, no, that didn't, it's really hard for me to watch it. Doesn't mean it's not history. I want to see history. And the DEI hires, I don't want someone standing over me with a knife that was hired just because he's, got black skin. I want the best person. I want the best person flying my planes. So it needs to it needs to go back to that. I know some places are, I think Microsoft just tossed out DEI or something like that. So I'm hoping it goes the other way. I'm just really hoping for a shift to turn it around. We just want to live our lives and be free to.
I think these things are it's having a moment. And for a cultural theoretician, we're living through it. You're a cultural theoretician too. It's what we're doing now. And we're documenting it, we're living it. And at the age we are, we're able to see the differences and the changes and to worry about them. And I'm very reassured by lots of the Gen Z who are completely no bullshit about the whole thing. And they're like, oh, we're not interested. They're just talking rubbish. They're very naturalistic. And quite a lot of them, I don't know if it's everybody. And unfortunately, we've got this pattern now of young white women, Democrats and Labour, and young white men, Republican or conservative or reform we have here. This is a problem division, because they're almost, they're doing that. Because lots of young women do have lots of advantages under the Democrats. And it's all that kind of, everyone be lovely and cool. Everyone be lovely and cool until you find out the results of what you're opting into, which is a groupthink. It's like and you probably, I don't know if you agree, but you might agree with the fact that with women, they tend to be much more collaborative. So they get agreement before they go forward, make sure everyone's okay, and then decide. But with guys, they tend to just go and decide and go and do their own thing. It's these sort of how we're wired, and the female way of doing things is much more conducive to socialism and to the things that are coming. Not with what you do, don't get me wrong, and not with most of my friends, female friends, but it's what that can be used in women, especially with emotional blackmail, and which doesn't work half as well on men. Just observation.
It's interesting. I never thought about it that way. I never thought about it. I know that we need some feminine energy, and I've talked about that before, in order to balance things off and cool things off. And that's feminine energy in men. You've got the masculine, but you've got the feminine, and that's not feminist or feminism. It's just a, collaborative working together. And I never really thought about it as far as where it becomes this like groupthink kind of, right? And how it
That's
can lead
happening in the
into the
politics.
socialism. Yes. And the thing about a woman, we're seeing this now because the person that got just placed into as presidential nominee, nobody liked her before. She got 0 delegates the last time. She's word salad. She's horrible. And they're creating this whole image around her. And it's like Kamala who? Now they're all banding around her and they're scrubbing her history and it's this brainwashing. It really hurts my head. I'm seeing this happen. She's not a good person, and it's really scary times. But it's just like not just her, but there's just how they laud somebody up, whatever it is for their purpose, and they create this whole. Even though you can put a clip on, they didn't say that. Well, here's the clip. She said that, said it, and
Yeah.
then they're going to use it as her color and being a woman. Keep throwing. I don't know how much people are still hurt over you're racist, you're a misogynist, you're not inclusive enough, and you're transphobic. All those words, are people still being can a lot of people see through that now when it's being lauded at them? I mean, the left still accepts it. Oh yes, you are in this, but are people still being bowed down by that and afraid to speak up because you're being called a racist?
It doesn't have any power in the UK anymore because of
Good.
the amount that the BBC, if people of a town get angry because a bunch of immigrants have been put in the middle of that town,
Yeah.
they come out
Yeah.
and they have a protest about it, and then the BBC start to say, "Look at the far right people coming out in that town in the north of England,"
Right.
and everyone's looking and going, "These people aren't far right," and they're trying to call them racist. And so that was about 2 years ago this happened, and since then, all intelligent people and actually everybody has sort of not cared about the tags anymore.
Good.
Racist, transphobic,
Mhm.
Islamophobic. No one really is bothered. And the homophobic thing's gone through its own kind of journey. It's
Mhm.
and anti-Semitic is big because of Islamism, as I was saying. But racist, it's just so overdone that honestly, no one intelligent that I know cares anymore.
Good. Good. So we're seeing a shift there. We're seeing a shift, and we are seeing this. I mean, there's many, many. I mean, that's another thing. All the illegals coming in this country. Oh, call them migrants. No, there's nothing good about what's happening coming through the border. We've got people from and it's not just like our little neighbors from Mexico coming in. It's from all over the world. They're already breaking all these asylum laws by crossing different countries in order to come into our countries, and unvetted criminals and handed out everything that we as our citizens aren't getting ourselves. And I always feel it makes me so mad, all this money that's gone to these foreign wars. Okay, until everyone has food on their table, until there's every homeless person off the street, until everybody has is being taken care of. There shouldn't be that in this country when we're sending 200 billion over to Ukraine. Yeah, it's I'm all about the America first. Let's take care of our people. We're a nation of immigrants. I mean, we're a melting pot. That's what's beautiful about our country. We don't have how can you have porous and open borders? How do you have a security of the country? It's not just our country, it's all over, Europe, that's in England, that's happening as well.
Mm.
So, I mean, how many 11 million unvetted people coming through? There's nothing. I mean, people are being raped. 100,000 kids are missing directly into their abusers' hands, fentanyl poisoning. And they're tear down the wall, let them in. They should come in. They're fleeing from harm. It's like bullshit. And then, okay, well, you open your backyard. I know they dumped a busload of them in front of Kamala's house. I didn't see anything else what happened there, but are you going to open up your door and let them live in your house, in your backyard? Oh, no, no, I'm not going to do that. So,
That's right.
yeah, it's crazy. All right. So we've talked a lot about this progressive and cultural wars. And, you've got this book, Delicate Balance of Reason, which is, I think everyone should pick up to really see what's happening right now and how we can overcome it. So is there anything that, I know this book just came out, is there anything else that you're working on right now? I know you've published and contributed to numerous books and albums. And can you talk about some of your favorite projects that were really significant for you? I know that you talked about your book, Compelling Speech, The Stammering Enigma, which won a Platinum Kostler Arts Award in 2023. Can you talk
Yeah.
about some of your books, what inspired you to write them, and what message for this book in particular do you hope it conveys to the readers?
Yeah. With Compelling Speech, Stammering Enigma was a book from last year, 2023, and I did a TED talk in Istanbul when I was living there 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
Istanbul, Turkey, and that was called Stammering and Creativity. As your audience will have heard, I have an occasional stammer. It comes and goes. It's not anywhere like as difficult now as it used to be. There's lots of techniques, and talking about it helps a great deal. And so I wrote an autobiography of a stammer last year. Compelling Speeches became my successful to that point. The TED Talk itself, of course, is a big deal. So that got 40,000 views or whatever it got. And it's apparently really, really helped lots of children and adults who stammer. And there's lots of resources out there for children who stammer, which is great. But there's also adults who stammer who tend to get a bit more ignored. And there's a lot of humor and dark edge, which, like our conversation today, I might be a stammerer, but I've also got a acute perspective into the world. It's not, it's a disability when it disables, but it's not the kind of disability that makes me sort of go, please look after me, world. I can still communicate on all the other things we're talking about. And that's the special nature of a stammer. It's like, and so I wanted to pack all those things into why it's called compelling speech is because, they're trying to compel our speech with pronouns and things like that. So I was trying to bring the disability and the culture wars at that point into that book, but it's much more about how disabilities are treated. The delicate balance is much more about everything that we're talking about today. Culture.
So how do you balance your work across all these different mediums? I know you're an artist. Is that your art behind you? Did you create that?
It
really
is.
Cool.
That's
really.
It's also the cover of
Picasso.
Delicate Balance.
It's
Picasso.
what?
Yeah. It's also the cover of A Delicate Balance of Reason. So
oh, okay.
And gave it to the designers. So that's Picasso. Thank you. I'm very into Cubism and 20th century modern art. I'm a massive adorer of that stuff, and I got my master's 20 years ago in that, and it's a thing I do. It's a thing I get a lot of joy from, and I've always got a painting on the go in my studio here, and so I was in an exhibition last year. I never know when the next one's going to be. I don't think we got one lined up, but I've always got something coming out in a magazine in a few weeks. That kind of thing with the art. Art to you, I try with writing art and music to do everything to equal intensity, so that you don't get the one that he just sort of does that in his spare time. I try and make sure all of it is equally oomph, so I get a deal here and talk to them about doing that properly, and a deal there. And if someone says, he just does that as a hobby, I can say, well, no, I should do that as a full scale. And what things earn is completely arbitrary these days. You never know what's going to make you a fortune and what's not. And it's barely about that for any creative I know anymore. It's about the amount of impact, I suppose, that you can have. Unfortunately, with communications, that if I was the writer that sort of said Delicate Balance was much more edgy, or if I said this is a book totally supporting Trump, for example, that might get much more of a purchase, But it's not the writer I am. I like to explore things much more grounded. So I take a longer time to do things. I'm happy with that. I don't know if a publisher would be,
So going back to the art real quick, I know writing is a lot of art, and I know you have that piece of art behind you that is on your book. Is there a piece of artwork or an exhibition that you are particularly proud of?
Well, to be honest, I guess it's this one because it was we showed it in a exhibition called Kaleidoscope last year at the Phoenix Gallery in Brighton. So it was the big piece at the end of the gallery thing. So I was very chuffed with that. And then put it on the front of this book. And it's been very popular with everybody. I put it here behind me so if people have something to look at that's not me, and to have that kind of, I'm happy with it. It's a good balance. It's got interesting colors. And the thing about a painting is that it's there for as long as it's there. It lives forever. If it's a Da Vinci, and if it's this, it will live until someone destroys it, So I suppose in the absence of anything being around me, I'm going to say it's this one. I've got thousands out there if people want to check on the Saatchi art. I've got loads of paintings to have a look at. I can
That's great.
Put it in the links maybe.
Yes, definitely put in the links. And that leads me to where can people find your work? What's the best way to find your work and your books? And if you have anything right now that's lighting you up, I know that you just had this Delicate Balance of Reason that just came up. So that's, and you said it's on audiobook, right? It just came out on Audible. So are you working on any other books? And let us know and we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, sure thing. So here is the Sean B. W. Parker. If you do Google, you'll see the the relevant sites. If you do my full name, if you just do Sean Parker, you'll get the Facebook guy, which is a whole different. So that's the reason that I use the
Imposter.
BW is just differentiate from him, because otherwise, you know how that works. But if they want to go to X, I think X Twitter is brilliant, and Sean BW Parker there, you can get all my news. I'm very busy on there. And then the Saatchi art for the art, and then Amazon for my 9 books are all there, and they can choose which one they want. Hope to point them in the direction of delicate balance because of what we've talked about today. That's what the place I'm at right now.
Yes. I will put everything in the show notes so they can find your work. And just a few more questions before we go. Since we talked a lot about like the cultural wars, and I know you've done a lot with justice reform, what changes do you hope to see in the justice system and what we're seeing as far as this cancel culture, progressivism, moving into Marxism, communism? What do you hope to see change in the next couple of years?
Well, the writer in me doesn't hope for anything. I just reflect things and then come and talk to you about what we're reflecting. That's me being pretentious. What I would like to see in terms of, I kind of cover miscarriages of justice a lot in Empowering the Innocent. The Lucy Letby case here, who's a nurse who was jailed for life for the murder of 8 babies, appears to be a massive miscarriage of justice. The case of Jeremy Bamber from the 80s, who apparently killed his family, complete miscarriage of justice, inside for 40 years. I cover all these cases too with ETI. Robin Garbutt, there's a million of them, and I'm very passionate about all that as well. So it would be great to see objectivity return to the justice system in both our countries, and to get rid of the believe the victim narrative, which has led to victimology everywhere. People saying, take pity on me, don't look at my behaviors, look at the effect on me. Well, the effect is actually irrelevant. It's the behaviors that matter, and to sort of get back to that thinking. And in terms of everything we talked today, I mean, I can't deny I want to see a return to individualism, libertarianism. What makes America entertaining for the rest of the world is David Hasselhoff. It's not some guy in a multicolored rainbow suit trying to be pansexual, So to try and get back to Pamela Anderson, if you want.
Yes, I agree 100%. And this has been a great conversation. And I know that we've covered a lot of topics that I usually don't cover on this podcast. And I've been attacked sometimes, because I'll comment on some things on like maybe Instagram, and then they're looking up my profile and I'm getting all these hate. I'm like, okay, keyboard warrior, I'm not allowed to comment on something. They're just like these faceless people that are just like throwing these attacks. And I've been like personally attacked, like, oh, you're a weakened heart. How can you have a awakened heart if you believe X, Y, and Z and all that? But I believe an awakened heart is to see all these things for what they are. And it's important to talk about these things. It doesn't mean that we're, it's more of a heavy subject, but it's important to awaken your heart to all things that are going on in this world, because it is going to affect us. We can't live in like fairy spiritual land all the time. It is part of our existence, but we have to live on this earth plane right now, and being more independent and libertarian, like you're talking about, and having sovereignty over our thoughts, our body, our minds, and everything that's, it's being taken away from us slowly. It's being stripped away. And unfortunately, the younger generation, if we don't talk about these things, they're so malleable right now with all these things that are being taught in these schools. And then, the higher levels of education are teaching them things. They're going to think it's just normal to be like this. And they're going to be so malleable, and they can be controlled over like generation apart. It's like they're not going to have these freedoms. They're not going to have their own thought. They're going to be thought policed. So It's very important for these things to be talked about.
Totally. And that's the problem with the pacifism argument, isn't it? It's like, just accept everything, everything's going to be fine, turn the other cheek. It's like,
No.
Well, that's fine until you're absolutely destroyed, because that's what elements out there will do, is to destroy you. And eventually you're forced into a position of fighting, but by just self-defense, self-preservation, struggling for the individual, which is a thing that both of our countries celebrate. And I never thought I was like that until 10 years ago. It's only a discovery in myself to go, well, yeah, absolutely. Bring the individual up. If the alternative's all this woke shit, So that's my personal journey in a nutshell.
Exactly. It's like, okay, this is like clown world, upside down world. Like, no, Yeah, I fight so hard at it. I've always been it's like freedom. You're tamping down on my freedom. Like, don't pull. I've been so independent, and I've really shown my colors over these last couple of years because I didn't fall into the groupthink. I had my own brain about it. I saw what's happening right away. I had my own people that I would listen to, that I trusted, that weren't buying into this narrative. So I've always, and it just shows how it is in a crisis. Like, when I was in Nazi Germany, I think I'd be the one, I'd be in the resistance. I'd be one of them, like, standing up for it. But yeah, it's very important to keep these conversations going to really save the next generation we're living on this earth right now. We're midlife, and we loved how life was before. We were so fortunate. We don't want to see it destroyed. And we do love our countries and our nations. And it's just turned into this.
It exists now. It exists now. It's still there. And it's like we're seeing it, them. We hate saying them, I'm sure.
Them,
I do.
Yeah.
But
it is they. Who's they? Well,
who's it? What's they? But they're trying to take it away. We can see them doing it. And we're still here. We're still here. We're still all right. It's just, it's a very crucial time for us to be doing it. And like you say about the younger, they are malleable. And we can't expect them all to be like sort of Paris 68 out there throwing Molotov cocktails, because they'll just be cancelled and arrested and everything else. So you need to do it intelligently. And with the authority of our, 40s and 50s, it means that you can actually go, well, I've seen some stuff. I know what's going on. And I might be a nice artist and a nice spiritual leader, but I'm also not stupid, and that's really helpful, I think, for everybody to realize there's nothing to do with the other things that we touch on, just it's a full person.
Yes, exactly. 100%. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I have one more question before we go, and I ask this of all my guests, and that is, what does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
Yes, you cut out then. You'd have to say it again because I didn't hear it.
Okay. What does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
Oh, having gone through the fire and coming out the other side and being much more into telling the truth is, that's the awakened heart for me. Just being honest, being yourself, telling the truth to other people, to people like you.
And not being afraid because you have the best intentions in mind. You're not looking to hurt anyone, but you're learning to speak your truth. And so, part of being an awakened heart, being able to do that.
That's right. And if it happens to touch on the politics, it touches on the politics. They've made it, not us. So.
Yes. And learning to have thick skin, because it's going to be thrown at us for speaking the truth. So, good times.
See, one of those bad comments online, every one of those bad comments is extra attention. So it just brings it all to the...
Yes. And then I've had them go and attack my own, going through and attacking other things. Oh, you got a big forehead. So, whatever. Just,
if you say so.
I guess you haven't done anything if you don't get those kind of things. So it is what it is in this digital age. But anyway, well, thank you so much, Sean, for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Absolutely delightful to do so.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awakened Heart Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenedheartpodcast.com.